Good evening, Chicago. Before we begin, I want to briefly address how candidates were selected to participate in tonight's town hall. As many of you know, there are 15 declared candidates running in the Illinois 9th Congressional District Democratic primary and 10 declared candidates running in the 2nd Congressional District. As a community media organization committed to civic engagement, CAN TV would have absolutely welcomed the opportunity to provide every candidate with a dedicated platform. However, the reality is that producing large-scale, professionally moderated town halls requires significant human and financial resources. Given those constraints, and in alignment with our audience demographics and programming strategy, CAN TV committed to producing 2 congressional town halls this cycle, one for the 2nd District and one for the 9th District. Experience and best practice make clear that placing more than 5 candidates on stage makes a meaningful 60 or even 90-minute discussion nearly impossible. Voters deserve substance, not sound bites. Our goal is to provide clarity, contrast, and thoughtful answers, not overcrowded exchanges where candidates have only seconds to respond. To determine which candidates would be invited, CAN TV applied the following benchmarks. Candidates must be polling at 5% or higher in independent, publicly available polling as of January 2026. If more than 5 candidates met that threshold, we weighed total fundraising and name recognition, including whether a candidate currently holds elected office or has a widely recognized public profile. This approach was not arbitrary. It was developed carefully and applied consistently. It reflects standard practice in media and debate formats nationwide, and it balances fairness with the practical realities of producing effective public forums. As Chicago's Community Access Network, we would have loved the luxury of hosting individual town halls for every candidate running for every open seat. But time and resources make that impossible. Ultimately, our responsibility is to the public to provide clarity, substance, and integrity in civic programming. This is the standard we applied here. Thank you, and enjoy tonight's conversation.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for tonight's Congressional District Candidate Town Hall. CAN TV is proud to sponsor this broadcast because it fully aligns with the network's enduring commitment to civic engagement, voter education, and ensuring that our communities have direct access to the information they need to participate fully in our democracy. As we approach the March 17th Illinois primary election, the decisions voters make will help determine not only who represents us in Congress, but how our communities are advocated for at the national level. Tonight's town hall is about information and empowerment, giving voters the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, understand their priorities, and evaluate their visions for the district. At a time when misinformation is widespread and trust in institutions is being tested, forums like this matter. Democracy works best when voters are informed, engaged, and heard. CAN TV is honored to help create that space tonight. Thank you for being part of this conversation and for taking an active role in shaping our collective future.
Good evening. I'm CAN TV's Chief Political Analyst, Andy Zopp. Welcome to a special edition of Chicago Newsroom 2.0, the Democratic primary town hall for Illinois' 9th Congressional District. This race is drawing statewide attention because for the first time in decades, the seat is open, and voters have a real choice about the future direction of Democratic leadership in Congress. Tonight, 3 candidates, Bushra Amawali, Han Win, and Mike Simmons, join us for a conversation about the future of the 9th District and what leadership must look like in a moment of historic challenge and possibility. Our goal here is simple: to give voters clear, direct answers about where these candidates stand on the economy, healthcare, democracy, and the values they would bring to Washington. Each candidate will have equal time, and we'll also hear directly from members of our audience. Let's begin with candidate introductions. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to give you, the voter, insight into who they are, why they are running, and one issue they believe Illinois' 9th Congressional District must address immediately. We'll begin with Mike Simmons.
Thank you so much, Andy, and thank you so much to everybody that joined us this evening. My name is Mike Simmons, and I serve as the state senator for the far north side of Chicago, serving the neighborhoods of Uptown, Edgewater, Rogers Park, Lincoln Square. I was born and raised in public housing in the Lincoln Square neighborhood, one of the first families to move into integrated housing as a result of the landmark 1976 Gautreaux Supreme Court decision. Growing up, I was the son of an African-American mother who had me when she was 18. She wanted to be a lawyer. She wanted to do a lot of great things with her life. She put it all off to raise me and my sister. She eventually opened her own salon, went back to school. She and I graduated from college on the same day. My dad was an asylum seeker from Ethiopia who came here fleeing a violent regime, and that gave me all the opportunities that I've had in my life. As a state senator, I've tried to fight for those communities that I come from, people who are marginalized and people who are not represented in the halls of power all across our state. And I've been really proud to be a strong voice for justice and for human rights for all people. I'm so proud to be running for Congress in this district, the place where I was born and raised, and a place where I feel like I'm a product of the struggles of so many of the people that were my neighbors and extended family growing up. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you. Mr. Nguyen.
Hi everyone, I am State Representative Han Nguyen. I represent the north side lakefront of the great city of Chicago. I'm just deeply honored and humbled to be here with you all in the live audience and with Ms. Zopp as well, and with folks watching from home as well. I'm running for the U.S. Congress right now to restore the American dream for all of us, to make sure that all of us get a fair shot at the American dream, the same fair shot that my family had growing up. My family and I were refugees from the Vietnam War. My grandparents died in Vietnam fighting for democracy, freedom, and human rights. My dad spent 5 years in a prison camp in that fight. My mom was homeless, and after the war ended, we were left behind. But thankfully, with the United States' support, we came over here as asylum seekers, and we were raised in a one-bedroom apartment, 8 of us. My mom worked in a factory for 14 hours a day with an 8th grade education, made $5 an hour, and my dad had PTSD from the war. So this community fought for me to have a chance. I was able to go to college on student loans and scholarships at Yale, went to Harvard for grad school, and came back to Chicago to work in community investments. And right now, what we're hearing across this district, from Algonquin to Chicago to Crystal Lake, is folks are really struggling. And we need to make sure we bring down the cost of living. We need to make sure that things are more affordable right now, whether it's healthcare costs, property taxes, housing costs, educational costs, transit costs. We have to protect Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security because it's going to be insolvent by 2035. And we got to protect fundamental human rights, women's rights, voting rights, immigrant rights, refugee rights, LGBTQ plus rights. And that's what I'm running to do, to make sure that we address all those issues and make sure we fight for the future of this country.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen.
Thank you.
Ms. Amawali.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Bushra Amiwala, and I currently am an elected official in Skokie, where I've been serving on a board of education for the past 7 years. My story is incomplete without sharing my parents' story first. They came to this country from Karachi, Pakistan in the 80s in pure immigrant fashion with a $20 bill and lots of dreams. My parents built their life in Illinois 9 brick by brick. My dad is a small business owner, my mom is a teacher, and growing up, government was the hand up, not hand out, that my family and I needed to get to where we are today. Once getting elected on the Board of Education, we became the reason why we signed an intergovernmental agreement with our township government, which meant when the first ICE arrest took place in our community, that pool of fund paid for that family's mortgage for 2 months. I'm running in a time right now where everything that I needed to make a life really wonderful in this country is at stake, being taken away from all of us. I'm running on a platform of Medicare for All. It's the fiscally responsible mode for our country to adopt to, supporting immigration with a clear path to citizenship, and abolishing ICE, and then finally, increasing federal funding for public education to alleviate the burden off of property taxpayers, renters, and homeowners. And I'm looking forward to getting to know what all of you care about today as well.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates. We're going to move to our first issue areas, and we're going to cover 5. The first one is going to be values, leadership, and leadership philosophy. So each of you will have 1 minute to answer each question posed. The first question is going to go to all three of you. And so I'm going to start with you, Mr. Nguyen. The question is, what specific attributes and qualities does the 9th District need from its next representative that it is not getting today?
Thank you so much, Ms. Zopp, for that question. I first ran for state representative during the pandemic because I saw folks were being left behind. I saw communities of color devastated by the Trump attacks on again, COVID-19, on public health information, on folks who did not get information, did not get the resources that they need. And so I think this district really needs collaboration from the 9th Congressional District next congressperson. We need to make sure that we lead with empathy, that we meet folks where they're at, that we also empowered communities of color, people of color as well. As the first Vietnamese American ever elected in Illinois' history of 206 years, I am very proud that we've been able to work in collaboration with our community members when it comes to passing bills in Springfield, when it comes to bringing back resources to our district, whether in healthcare, housing, education, and also making sure that we build a very robust co-governance model where we're able to really work with community leaders on issues that matter most to us and our families and our kids. And so that's the sort of same attribute that I will bring to Washington, someone that is going to be very community-oriented, solutions-oriented, and also making sure that we have action steps to bring back resources to our community.
Ms. Amawala.
I am looking forward to bringing cultural, competent leadership. This district, fun fact, is a white minority district. We have 16% of this community be Hispanic and Latino, 15% be Asian, 9% Black, and 11% Middle Eastern North African. Therefore, at the minimum, we should have our Constituent Services Office have the 3 major languages spoken in this district as interpretation or translation available to the communities we serve. The second thing is separating the bucket of minority group to see all the different subfacets of minority. That means that Black-owned businesses get the respect and honor they deserve in separation with Asian-owned businesses. When you convolute all of them to a shared pool of percentage, that hurts all of us.
Thank you. Mr. Simmons.
I think it's authenticity. We need people in Congress right now that come from their communities, don't have to learn about them through textbooks, don't have to hear about them through focus groups, who have survived the struggles of those communities. In the state Senate, I've been really proud to put together people's legislative councils that are comprised of people who are typically disconnected from political power, including survivors of gun violence, including single parents, including small business owners. And we've created policy bills in Springfield that passed 50 bills in the last 5 years into law. Half of them came directly from constituents who participated in those councils or who came to my office and needed something from government. People are tired of people representing them in Washington who vote the right way, who put out press conferences, but don't understand our struggles and are not effective. I'm running to be an authentic and powerful voice for the diverse communities that shaped and raised me throughout my entire life and whom I serve today as state senator.
Thank you. All right, these next questions, we're still on the topic of values and leadership philosophy, but they're going to be candidate specific. And Mr. Simmons, I'm going to start with you. You've built a reputation as a progressive legislator who works inside the system, passing bills, negotiating with leadership, and delivering tangible wins. Has there ever been a moment when working within the system forced you to accept a compromise that troubled you? And also, can you explain how you accept or how you manage incremental progress versus driving for systemic change?
Yeah. So in the 5 years that I've served in the state Senate, my presence is unprecedented. I'm the first openly gay person to serve in the Illinois Senate. I'm the first Black person to represent my Senate district. The person that came before me was from a multi-million-dollar household. I grew up in public housing. The change there, the contrast there, and the perspectives that I've been able to bring to government have animated debates on how we get healthcare access to all communities, but particularly community of colors, particularly Black communities. I've been proud to be able to get results, bringing funds back to hospitals and safety net clinics in my district that meet those needs. But I've also been really proud to push back on people who are in power, including Democrats, who sometimes are too complacent on issues like gun safety. I had to push to get the assault weapons ban. I had to push to make Illinois a sanctuary state for LGBTQ families when some of my Democratic colleagues didn't want to stand up for us. And I think that it's been a strong mix of being a strong voice for authentic communities, but being able to go toe-to-toe with people who've been in power for 30 and 40 years and bring home results and bring back legislative receipts. And that's why I'm running for Congress, because our country needs that type of leadership right now.
Thank you. Ms. Amawala, you are next. You've built your political identity as a young progressive reformer who challenges entrenched systems, but governing often requires compromise, coalition building, and patience. Has there been a moment in your public service when your values were tested by political reality? And how do you decide when to stand firm versus when to negotiate?
I think coalition building and bridge building has been the foundation of the success I found politically. I first ran for public office when I was 19 against a 16-year Democratic incumbent. So when I got elected on the Board of Education 7 years ago, I became the first Gen Z elected official in our nation's history. And I'm really proud to have been the reason that our public school mandates the offering of halal, kosher, and vegetarian food options. I could have stopped at just one, but it didn't make sense to do that. And that became a case study for the state of Illinois, and I had the privilege to testify in front of our Illinois General Assembly to showcase this legislation, how it works, how it increases productivity and reduces food waste, and this law passed. And now every public institution in our state thinks schools, prisons, and hospitals have to require they have halal, kosher, and vegetarian food options for the people they serve.
Thank you. Mr. Nguyen, you've spoken openly about lived experience, resilience, and moral clarity shaping your public service. Can you give a moment, a political moment, a vote, a position you took where doing what you believed was right came at a real personal or professional cost? And how does that experience how is that going to shape you as a leader in Washington?
Absolutely, and I think, again, when I ran for state representative during the pandemic, I took on the political establishment, the Chicago machine, and we won with the support of neighbors, folks talking to folks. And that's how we've always built coalition. That's all how we've always governed, is making sure that we talk to our neighbors, making sure that we're only accountable to our neighbors. So in Springfield, we passed numerous legislation in the past 4 years that I've been down there. As the vice chairman of housing, we were able to allocate $350 million extra every year when it comes to addressing affordable housing needs across the state. And one of the things that we have really been focused on is making sure that folks have access to quality affordable housing, that folks also have access to that next pathway, when they're able to buy their first home as well. And so there's been a lot of conversation in Springfield where we've had to push back against the naysayers, right? The folks who do not want that in our communities, right? And so we have really fought to make sure that we champion affordable housing as the vice chairman of the housing committee.
Thank you,
And
Mr.
we've also
Nguyen.
fought to make sure that we can
Thank
bring
you.
back those resources back to Chicago as well.
Thank you. We're going to move to our next topic, which is economy, housing, and housing affordability. So the first question, each of you will have a minute to answer. I'm going to ask two different questions, but they'll be the same, but each of you will have a minute to answer. Ms. Amawali, we're going to start with you. The first question is, housing costs continue to rise faster than wages across the 9th District. What federal action would you prioritize in your first year to lower costs, and what are you willing to say no to in order to pay for it?
First, I will say no to every single hedge fund, billionaire, corporate PAC that tries to offer me money during this campaign and election cycle to buy my vote. It is an absolute no. I have been offered corporate PAC money since my inception and genesis of a political candidate for the past 9 years, and I have consistently said no. That being said, the utmost priority once being elected into the federal Congress is to vote no and ban hedge fund owners and private equity from buying up affordable housing units and jacking up the cost of rent for all of us. That at the minimum should be banned. That should not be allowed in our country in any form.
Thank you. Mr. Nguyen, can you answer the same question?
Yes, so one of the things that I've introduced to make sure that we are addressing the high cost of housing, of property taxes in Springfield, and what we're going to bring to the federal level is making sure that we go after these hedge fund billionaire companies, right? Right now, they pay nothing in terms of transaction fee. My bill right now introduces, if you take 1/5 of 1 penny on every financial transaction that they've done, we can generate $20 billion extra just for the state of Illinois alone. And we can use that money to then reduce your property taxes, reduce your cost of housing. We can then translate this exact legislation to the national level, and that will allow for us, according to the Congressional Budget Office, $800 billion extra over the course of 10 years. That allows for us, again, to bring back these resources to our communities to make sure that we can lower your housing costs, your property taxes. And that's something that we have to do, is we have to take on these hedge fund companies and these multi-billionaires that are not paying their fair share right now of taxes, whereas all of us are paying way too much. Thank you.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes, I agree with everything that my co-panelists have said. I would take it a step further. I think that we obviously need to come for the hedge funds. Private equity firms are buying up whole blocks in places like Rogers Park and places like Hyde Park right now in the throes of gentrification. We need elected officials in Washington who understand that, who've actually lived in these communities, who have felt the displacement pressures that come from hedge funds that are buying up our cities. And in Congress, I would bring forth legislation to close corporate loopholes the same way we have done in the Illinois Senate. I've been proud as a member of the Senate Progressive Caucus to exercise no less than $700 million in corporate loopholes that we've been able to close. We need that same leadership at the federal level. I've also said as part of my platform that we need to close offshore tax havens where a lot of rich insidious folks are keeping a lot of their wealth and a lot of their investments. They're not paying capital gains on those investments. They're not paying into the U.S. government's fiscal treasury, and that's leaving us all having austerity discussions around housing and all the other cuts that have been put upon us. I would also, part of my platform includes cutting the Department of Defense budget by 20% because we don't need to keep paying for obscure missile defense systems when we have schools in the 9th Congressional District that are falling apart.
Thank you. Thank you. So the second question, same topic now, economy, housing and affordability. And we're going to start with you, Mr. Nguyen. How do you prevent progressive housing goals from being watered down in Congress? Some of the things you just talked about.
Absolutely. And again, I think we have to really address the issue right now, which is these hedge fund companies, whether it's Blackstone or BlackRock, they're buying, again, neighborhoods of households, and they're jacking up the prices for consumers, right? For all of us. We need to make sure that we hold them accountable for their actions. We also need to make sure that we expand opportunity as well. That means future investments and more investments into the Department of Housing and Urban Development, making sure that we look at zones where folks have been left behind, folks have been displaced, and making sure that we make further investments in those zones. I think that's very important. I think the other thing we have to do is also make sure we realize it's not just, there is a spectrum of housing, right? It goes from homelessness to housing stability. And we need to make sure that whether we're addressing homelessness at that level, we also need to make sure that folks can buy their first home as well. We saw during the pandemic, interest rates were at 3% during the pandemic. Right now, they're at like 7 to 8%. We need to make sure that we bring those interest rates down, provide capital for folks to buy their first home. We need to make sure that we're very creative about these solutions. And that's one of my proposals, is we need to be very innovative at the national level. We need to usher in a new generation of leadership that understands how things have worked and how things haven't worked and how we can provide progress.
Thank you. We're going to thank you. That's good answer. Mr. Simmons, we're going to go.
You're excited.
We see that. Mr. Simmons, the same question. How do you prevent progressive housing goals from being watered down in Congress?
Well, you must be outspoken and bold about these issues. Listen, I grew up in public housing, the result of a Supreme Court decision that made it possible for my family, the first black family, to move into the Lincoln Square neighborhood in Chicago. And in Congress, I would be a powerful voice for the issue of housing. It has been a generation since we've seen any kind of serious political commitment to this issue. We absolutely should have a better pathway for people to become first-time homeowners. My generation, by the way, the millennial generation, is the first generation where the average age where we buy our first home is 40 years old. We can do so much better than this. And in this congressional seat where we have so many dense city blocks, we have high poverty census tracts, and we have some of the most beautiful bungalow homes in the country, we need to fight our own housing. And I understand the struggle of housing in our district and in broader Chicagoland and so many other communities, cities, and suburbs are dealing with.
Ms. Amawali, same question.
So first, it's a tier-based affordable housing plan. That means right now, whether you make under $60,000, whether that's $30,000 a year annually or $59,999, your rate and eligibility for affordable housing in the eyes of the government is the same. Having a tiered system means that being below the poverty line is not a monolith, right? There are different levels to what is required to be eligible for affordable housing, and folks that have that lived experience can understand and advocate for that in an effective way where it includes others to be able to afford different types of affordable housing units without even relying on things like roommates, as an example. That's something that we're seeing a lot, especially when it comes to the age conversation. And last quick thing that I'll say as well, to ensure that all of this actually can go through, I'm not going to be one of those members of the House that tries to work.
I know you want to say that one last thing, but we got to move on.
You got the drill.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to our next issue area, which is healthcare, mental health, and human dignity. So we're going to have two questions, but we're going to start first with, and you each get a chance to answer each question. The first question is going to go to Mr. Simmons, and it is Medicare for all still the goal for Democrats, or has the party moved on? And if so, then what's the platform?
I think it is absolutely Medicare for all. The issue of health care is wildly popular amongst the Democratic base. And I have said publicly that I think it's an issue that we cannot compromise on. Listen, I believe in universal health care. I want everybody in our country to have access to health care, not just those who are at the very top or those who have good jobs. I come from a household where I regularly remember growing up and watching the women I love, including my mother, struggle to access health care. I remember the anger that I felt as her son, watching her deal with out-of-touch doctors and medical personnel that had no interest in her wellness or the wellness of her family. I am running for Congress to bring a voice to this discussion so that we can move towards Medicare for all. I've been really proud in the state Senate to be working towards that goal by trying to expand Medicaid eligibility up from 133% of the federal poverty level to 200%, so that we don't have this donut hole of small business owners and others who are too rich for Medicaid but can't afford to buy into the Affordable Care Act exchanges. And so that is an issue that I absolutely would push the Democratic Party so that Medicare for all is the norm and ultimately the outcome.
Mr. Nguyen, Medicare for all still a part of a platform for the Democratic Party?
Yeah, absolutely. It's my platform right now as well, but I think we need to also make sure we solve right now for the immediate, right? I mean, right now we know that the Trump cuts have taken $800 million from Medicaid, just for Illinois alone. That's 39,000 families in this congressional district. And so we need to make sure that we go after them and make sure that we can bring back those resources. Again, my plan, if we take 1/5 of 1 penny, 1/5 of 1 penny on every financial transaction, that's $800 billion extra over the course of 10 years. We can bring back that money and expand coverage. I think the other thing we have to do is make sure we go after the pharmacy benefit managers. These are the pharmaceutical companies that negotiate prices amongst themselves and the insurance companies. Then they jack up the price for all of us. So we need to make sure that we regulate them, make sure that they're able to make sure that we are negotiating prices fairly. And then the last thing we need to do is also make sure that we end the pay to delay scam. Right now, Big Pharma pays low companies money so that they can keep their generics off the shelf. That helps inflates the price for all of us, again, at the expense of all of us, and Big Pharma makes money. So again, we need to make sure that we end the pay to delay scam. And so I have a solution for all of these problems, and we need to make sure we address these solutions. Thank you.
Ms. Amawala.
Medicare for all is absolutely the North Star and the solution that every single Democrat in this country and Republicans should be advocating for. From the 33 industrialized countries in the world, 32 of them have a universal healthcare model in place. And right now in our country, we are the only ones who do not. And that is because corporate insurance buys our candidates and elected officials on both sides of the aisle. And we're seeing that insurance is a for-profit middleman. Medicare is that existing infrastructure that already exists and can take information from privatized insurance, because right now public institutions, private corporations, and all of us pay into a for-profit, middleman-funded healthcare model that just doesn't work for us.
Thank you. This next question, Mr. Nguyen, we're going to go to you first. Where do you believe the current system most dehumanizes people, particularly immigrants, low-income families, or those with untreated mental illness? And what specific change would you push at the federal level to restore dignity?
Yeah, this issue is deeply personal to me. My father suffered from PTSD during the Vietnam War when he was a POW for 5 years. My family died during the Vietnam War as well, and I grew up, on Medicaid. My parents are on Medicare right now, so I think we need to make sure we address the gaps that we're seeing right now in terms of the investments in mental health services across this district. When I've talked to our neighbors, whether it's Frank or Samantha, they share with me their stories about how much the cost has been right now for mental health services and what they have seen from their kids as well when it comes to us recovering from the pandemic. So we need to make sure that we make these investments. We also need to make sure that we address the coverage from the Health and Human Services Department, right? I mean, right now we have a secretary, Bobby Kennedy, who does not believe in science. So we need to really restore that in American society. We need to restore that in Congress. And we need to also provide oversight, transparency, and accountability when it comes to that department, and make sure that we don't just go back to the status quo, because the status quo was not good enough before the pandemic and before 2024 elections. We need to make sure that we come back and we provide more resources for these agencies.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Simmons?
Would you mind repeating the question?
Sure, absolutely. Where you touched on this in your previous answer. Where do you believe the current system most dehumanizes people, particularly immigrants, low-income families, or those with untreated mental illness? And what specific changes would you push at the federal level to restore dignity?
Yeah, I think that we fail our society when it comes to addiction. And I've seen loved ones of mine struggle with this. And I will always fight for people who are struggling with addiction and who I believe can recover. Our systems need to be better funded for those that are struggling with untreated mental health. It's a scourge on our nation right now. I'm proud that mental health parity is a big part of my platform. The first pillar is making sure that mental health is treated on the same terms as physical health. And that means fully funding our mental health programs in our local clinics. It means making sure that they have cultural competency training so that they can reach those families that are afraid to engage the mental health system or where it's stigmatized. And you could count on me in the 9th Congressional District to be a leader on this issue. And I can name several others where I think our communities are dehumanized. I would name under immigration the ICE raids as a pretty glaring example of where our federal government further dehumanizes immigrant families like my father's.
Ms. Amawala.
Right now, we're seeing that it's food insecurity. A lot of the times, we've even seen mental illnesses be linked and increased with sleep deprivation and people who are hungry. And that means that when we saw those SNAP cuts at the federal level, I mean, as the daughter of someone who grew up on SNAP, I know the first of the month is when you get your snack of choice. And to see that ripped away from people right now, and in tandem with that, we have food deserts in our community where within a mile radius, people cannot be able to walk or get to a grocery store. And then on top of that, we have zip codes that have higher prices of groceries than their neighboring zip codes do. All of that needs to be banned and illegal. And if your sustenance and material needs are not being met, that is one of the root causes to something that already exists and can be triggered in a way that really is deeply personal, and our federal government can and should prioritize.
Thank you. We're now going to move on to our next issue area number 4, which is democracy, media, and trust. And each of these questions will be posed to each candidate. I'm going to start with you, Ms. Amawala. Trust in institutions, including Congress and the media, is at historic lows. Are these institutions broken, or have they failed to respond quickly enough to the issues being raised by the Trump administration?
I do not blame the trust rate being low. I think that's why a lot of my fellow candidates and I are running for this seat, to restore that trust as proven community leaders. And that means that I am in favor of impeaching this administration, because when we saw National Public Radio and Public Broadcasting Station be the first things to be defunded in this administration, you cannot tell me that that does not mean this administration is trying to create a generation of people who do not know how to critically think on themselves. They're trying to create a generation of people who do not know how to read beyond the headlines, to be these silent folks that just walk and see this agenda happening, thinking there's nothing that can be done.
Thank you. Mr. Nguyen?
Look, we as Democrats need to fight back right now. I mean, we've seen it over the last decade. The Republicans are playing a long game, right, where they've infiltrated our legacy media, they've infiltrated new media, they've created new platforms on social media pages, they've created platforms on college campuses. And so we need to make sure that we fight back, but we, again, need to make sure that we hold this president accountable for his actions, that there is oversight, transparency, and accountability, that we also go after, again, the folks who have perpetrated these lies, right? And so I think that's something that's very important right now. I think the Democrats also need to make sure that we, again, bill for the future, right? We need to make sure that we meet folks where they're at. We need to talk to our neighbors about the misinformation that's coming out. And we also need to ensure that we introduce, again, new media, new legacy media, new ways of information where folks are able to get them in bite-sized pieces. I think the last thing we need to do is make sure that we look at publications like the Washington Post that are controlled by these billionaires. And these billionaires, just last week, fired a lot of journalists from the Washington Post, folks who are in current war zones right now. And that's not right. We need to make sure that these billionaires cannot control these sort of corporations at their whim, and where they're, again, perpetuating propaganda and all this misinformation that is leading to voter distrust of government right now.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. Mr. Simmons?
Yeah, I think that what I would add to what already has been said is that I think people are hungry for more authentic representation that looks and sounds like the struggles they've actually lived through. This is why so many disaffected Americans have voted for Donald Trump. The Make America Great movement is one of a grievance. And a lot of our white working class Americans are people who ultimately are not well served economically by anything coming out of Washington. And so that's part of the outcome of a failure of our entire civic society in this country. And so we have to reckon with where media is right now. People don't consume news at any kind of real substantive level. A lot of it is headlines and clickbait. You now have AI coming to the picture, creating a whole new scenario where you have misinformation that is at the state level. And we have to think about this in historical terms of how fascism happens and how we have tyrannical governments come to power. It always involves propaganda, it involves misinformation, and it involves having an other person who is the enemy. And I represent a candidate in this race. I'm running because I insist on writing the next chapter of American history. I will not have the price my ancestors paid just be thrown away by a madman in the White House who insists on making us all his economic pawns.
Thank you. Thank you. The next question is, how do you legislate, and this is going to go to you, Mr. Simmons, first. How do you legislate an environment shaped by misinformation? Ties directly on where you were. Yeah. You can thank me later for
So you know, I'm really proud of my record in the state Senate. You know, I've passed 50 bills in just 5 years. People said because I wasn't a millionaire or you know didn't come from a certain family that it might have been a fluke when I came to the state Senate. Well, we've passed 50 bills. The new child tax credit is legislation I passed, working with single parents in my Senate district. Legislation I worked on with Governor Pritzker that erases medical debt for 400,000 households to this date is legislation I worked on in community in my Senate district. That's the model I'm going to replicate in Congress for the 9th Congressional District, where we sit down with the people and we help educate them. We explain to them with transparency what it means to make things happen in government. And when we don't meet their expectations, we tell them why. And I believe that you must do frequent town halls. You must not just do a newsletter, but you need to be translating it into no less than a dozen languages for my super diverse congressional district where I was born and raised. And then you have to be able to communicate to people what you've accomplished. And then I think if our elected officials, the next generation of Congress does that, misinformation will not carry the day.
Ms. Amawala, how do you legislate in an environment full of misinformation?
So this is why we saw the Trump administration win a second term. We have Republicans that run on ethos, emotion, and it's particularly fear, honestly, which is a really cheap emotion to invoke. It's quick, easy, fast, and bad for you. It's the junk food of emotions. And then you have Democrats that try to come with logos. They try to come with logic. And when a whole different part of your brain is activated, you will not be able to understand the facts. And that is how the Republican agenda makes misinformation work in their favor. So that means Democrats need to give people something to vote for, and we need to activate the joy and the hope part of the brain. And that means that something like taxing billionaires to pay their fair share so all of us can have money back into our pockets, that is something to vote for.
Okay. Mr. Nguyen?
Look, you know, I think right now Democrats have been way too complacent in Washington. The Republicans are running wild all over us, and we need to make sure we send Democrats that are going to be aggressive, that are going to champion our best interests, right? And I think we need to send someone like me, who understands the struggles, who has the lived experience, and I think who is going to make sure that we put affordability at the forefront, right? We need to deliver tangible results for the American people, and we need to make sure that we deliver those results by bringing down your cost of living, your cost of healthcare, your cost of utilities, and that's my plan right now, is to make sure we go after these billionaires, making sure that they pay their fair share when it comes to hedge funds, making sure that they pay their fair share when it comes to Social Security, so that we can make sure that all of us are secure and sustainable and safe. I think the last thing we need to do is provide more and more aggressive behavior when it comes to oversight. Again, on the Oversight Committee, it's been crickets. We need to make sure that there is transparency, accountability on the Oversight Committee. We also make sure we have to challenge the Republicans where they're at. You know, that means we can't be scared to go to Georgia or any other states across this country, swing states and swing districts, to make sure we convince the American people, independent voters, Republican voters, and Democratic voters to turn out for the Democratic Party in 2026 and 2028 so we can take back Congress and the White House.
Mr. Nguyen, so building on actually something that all of you've said, so I'm going to ask the same question because you've talked about the current Democratic regime in Washington. What do you think about the leadership of the Democratic Party in Congress? Do we need a new minority leader? Should Hakeem Jeffries be replaced?
Look, we need to be more aggressive right now. And I think what we've heard from the voters is that Democrats are not doing enough in Washington, whether in the House or the Senate. And I think we need to be very honest with the American people that we need change and we need a new generation of leadership that's going to step up, that's going to deliver for the American people. And I think folks want tangible results. right? We want to make sure that we reduce your cost of living. That's, again, been my laser focus right now on the campaign trail. Folks that I've talked to through this congressional district, and that's something that I, again, would welcome in terms of, again, a new change in terms of leadership and a new change in terms of aggressive behavior as well.
Thank you. Mr. Simmons, what do you think?
You know, if I win this primary and go off to Congress to represent the 9th District, everything is going to be a conversation. I will not go to Congress and be just a freshman who is sitting at the back of the aisle waiting for leadership to hand them a bill and pat them on the head. That's not who I've been in the state Senate. I came in on day one introducing legislation. In fact, my very first bill was a child tax credit. That took me 3 years. I remember how heartbroken I was when we didn't get it done my first year, but I stayed at it. And that's what we need right now in Congress. And so on day one, I'm having a conversation with the Democratic leadership to say, what can you do to help me bring down the cost of rent for my constituents? What can you do to make it easier for my families to afford their first home? What can you do to help me stop book banning of LGBTQ authors in our local schools? What can you do to help me protect our democracy and get ICE off our streets? And the person who makes the best case for empowering me as a freshman member will have my vote for hopefully Speaker, because I want the Democrats to take back the House, but either Speaker or Minority Leader.
Yeah. Thank you. And then, before I go back, I just want to know, Mr. Wynn, are you a yes or no on Hakeem or Jeffries as the leader?
I'm going to put my constituents and the neighbors in the 9th District at the forefront when I make that decision, but it's going to be a conversation in terms of what we need in terms of leadership style,
Okay.
how we
I
be
was
more
just
aggressive.
looking for a yes or no. Mr. Simmons?
As I said, it starts with a conversation, and I'm a pretty tough negotiator. I'm not known in the Illinois Senate as a pushover, and so, I'll make my case for what I need to represent my constituents, and we'll take it from there.
Ms. Amawali, how about you? Leadership in Congress on the Democratic Party, Mr. Jeffries, should he stay, not stay?
So before I decide to vote for Minority Leader Jeffries, and to Senator Simmons' point, hopefully Majority Leader
Jeffries.
Speaker, thank you, I would demand a floor vote for Medicare for All. And we will see every single person in the House that is not in favor of that and hope they get primaried in the upcoming election cycle. And that is what leverage looks like. We see the Republicans do a really good job negotiating within their party and with Democrats, because what we found is that we can increase the size of the pie. We are so busy cherry picking things and making the pie smaller for all of us when we have a lot of integrative issues we can be in favor of together.
Thank you. All right. Believe it or not, we are going to our final issue area, which is immigration, civil rights, and community protection. And we have two questions. We're going to start with you, Ms. Amawala. What role should Democrats in Congress play in limiting ICE overreach?
So first, I am very in favor of abolishing ICE. ICE is a racist institution that was created as a product in response to 9/11, which immediately diverted its attention to our Latino brothers and sisters. I say it's racist because they have a quota system. You pick up X amount of people in Y amount of time, you make Z amount of money. If I was in the House right now, I would vote no on the DHS funding bill. I would repeal the $7.5 billion multi-year funding contract ICE received, and I would impeach Pam Bondi and Kristi Noem, and finally take away the federal immunity that ICE agents have been pardoned to ensure there is due process in trials.
Mr. Wynn?
This issue is deeply personal to me. I am the only immigrant and refugee in this race of about 20 people. My family and I went through the immigration process, and we waited for 18 years in Vietnam seeking asylum. And so that was a very long process for us. I can say this as well. Even about a couple months ago, when we were out in the streets of Uptown, patrolling our streets, making sure that we were protecting our neighbors from unfalse arrests, we were encountering ICE, and 6 ICE agents put a gun to my head, point blank, as we were out telling our neighbors of their rights, due process, and making sure that they are protected. And so that is a deeply personal issue to me. We want to make sure that we can dismantle ICE right now, make sure that they're held accountable for their actions, for what happened in Illinois and what happened in Minneapolis. And we gotta make sure that we go after all these bad players that have been, again, not held accountable for any of their actions. We have to go after them. We also need to make sure that, again, we look at their budget right now, which is a ginormous budget, that we reduce that budget. And we also need to make sure that they do their actual job, right? The immigration system needs to reform as a whole.
Thank you.
We need to make sure the immigration system is way more humane.
Mr. Wynn. Thank you. Mr. Simmons?
Yeah, as a son of an Ethiopian asylum seeker and an African-American mother, I have a point of view on both of these that is very much at the core of who I am and my whole story. My father came here because he was granted asylum to come here from a country where his brother was kidnapped by the government. He fled the country of Ethiopia without even telling my grandmother, left in the middle of the night with his brother so that he could get here safely. I was his firstborn child in this country. My mother is a descendant of people who were great migrants from the deep south, from Mississippi and Georgia, where they were not allowed to vote. They were not allowed to proudly and openly own businesses and enjoy the fruits of what it means to be an American person. And so I'm going to be fighting to have a robust pathway to citizenship so we can increase the number of asylees, not decrease them, so that we can increase the number of H-1B1 visas. And I would be fighting to protect the voting rights that my grandparents' generation and your generations fought to bring us forward in this country, and fight to expand those voting rights and fight to expand those civil rights, because the MAGA movement is trying to erase them before our eyes, and complacent Democrats are sitting on their hands and not fighting back.
So, Mr. Simmons, the next question is, I'm going to start with you, is very related to what you said. One of the areas where we've seen people have real issues are in mixed status households, where families are split. How would you work to strengthen protection for those households?
It would be a top priority. I think that the way that America redeems its past is by continuing to be a place where persecuted people from all over the world can come to home. That's certainly the case with my father. And so, you know, for me, I'm always standing with all immigrant communities and migrant communities, including those that are undocumented. And I think that these are people that are fleeing persecuted backgrounds, just like 90% of the people who live in America who are not indigenous, or like my mother's ancestors were brought here involuntarily. And so I think that we have to continue that, and we need people in Congress who are going to be effective fighters on this issue. The status quo is failing. I would bring new energy and new blood to this discussion, and to set of policy outcomes that we could actually point to in several years.
Ms. Amawala?
Right now, we're seeing the pathway to citizenship be an example of the laws and legislation our own federal government is not following. I know people in Illinois 9 who have been in the immigration process and citizenship process for almost 2 decades. That is unacceptable. We can easily put a cap on the federal immigration process to 5 years and invest in more courts, in more immigration judges to take away this backlog that currently exists. We just saw Amazon lay off 30,000 workers, and a large percentage of that were on H-1B work visas. What happens to their pathway to citizenship? And finally, we have students come to this country on a student visa who don't find employment within a year of graduation, whose only options become get another degree or go back to your country of origin. That is unacceptable. We are losing talent that is being educated in our own country.
Mr. Nguyen?
Look, we need to create a much more humane, dignified immigration system. Again, my family and I went through this process for 18 years before we were granted asylum in the United States. So we need to make sure that, again, right now, what happened with the Trump administration, they decreased the number of refugees from 75,000 during the Biden administration to tonight zero right now in this current administration. So we need to make sure we restore those numbers, make sure that folks are able to escape from war and come here for economic opportunity. We also need to make sure that, again, folks who are waiting right now for status, who are undocumented, that there is a pathway to citizenship for them as well. For the dreamers who have waited for so long, who have contributed to our economy, who've gone to our schools, we need to make sure that there is a pathway for them as well. And then certainly for the folks, the kids who are coming over here as well, who are attending our public universities in Illinois and across this country, we need to make sure that once they graduate from our college, that we keep their talents, we keep their skill sets in the United States so that they can contribute to our economy versus another economy elsewhere, right? So I think those are some of the solutions that we have to present at the national level. I do believe that we need to make sure that the system has to be way more humane, way more dignified, and I think we can get there, but we can't get there without everyone's support right now.
Thank you.
Tonight, we're bringing together experts, advocates, caregivers, and older adults to talk honestly about what it means to age in Chicago today.
How do we stay mentally and physically strong as we age? And what can our community do to make aging something we embrace, not fear?
State of Aging, a community conversation. Wednesday, February 18th at 7 p.m. Only on CAN-TV 19. Experience the power of community television.
It's time to turn it over to the voters here to pose questions. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question posed. Nikki, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, and we have our first question. State your name followed by your question.
Jennifer Nolan. Several members of Congress accept contributions from AIPAC or groups aligned with it, while others refuse. Will you accept money from AIPAC or similar foreign policy PACs? And how should voters judge whether campaign contributions influence a member's position on Israel, Gaza, and U.S. foreign policy?
Mr. Nguyen, we'll start with you.
I have not taken any money from any special interest groups, whether it is AIPAC or big pharma, big oil, big weapons, whatever have you. And that's been very great for our campaign. We are a grassroots run campaign. We have raised over $1 million from over 10,000 people across our district and across the country. And I think that's very important, that we are only held accountable and that we are accountable to our neighbors as well. So for me, that question is very clear. We do not receive any money from any special interest groups. Thank you.
Ms. Amawala.
So to the first part of your question, any candidate that does receive money from groups like AIPAC, Big Pharma, Big Oil, they are voting in interest of those groups and organizations, and I am proud to be rejecting and declining that fund of money. I'm not self-funding my campaign. I don't come from a myriad of wealth or generational wealth of that means, and we have everyday contributors donating to our campaign, meaning those are the people that we respond to once elected to this seat in Washington.
Mr. Simmons.
I do not take money from AIPAC. I don't take any money from corporations or special interest groups. I don't come from wealth and privilege, and in this race, it is the only thing that has been a struggle is raising money from people who typically only give to politicians. Those are not the people I'm working for anyway. I'll just pull the Band-Aid off and say that one of our opponents in this race, who's not here tonight, named Laura Fine, we looked at her numbers last weekend and we discovered that she's taken thousands of dollars from groups that give to people that give to AIPAC, that also give to MAGA Republicans in Congress, and who also give to Donald Trump. I was one of the first candidates to call her out for that because I don't want the voices of my community being drowned out by that kind of money.
Thank you. Nikki?
Okay, we have a second question. State your name.
Bussy Clodfelter.
And your question.
What is one issue where you believe Democrats talk progressively during campaigns, but govern cautiously once elected? And how would you personally do things differently if in Congress?
Mr. Simmons, we're going to start with you.
You said how do they say one thing and then do another?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a real problem with our democracy. It's why I'm running for Congress, because in the Illinois Senate, I've been a powerful and authentic voice where when I say things, people understand what I'm saying. I'm very plain spoken and accessible. And I think we need our elected officials to say more things that make sense to regular people, because a lot of them are talking in boilerplate and they're saying poll tested, focus group tested verbiage that is not bringing down the cost of healthcare. It's not helping us to afford prescription drugs. It's not helping our seniors have a pathway to retirement security. And so I believe that you must, as an elected official, you must do what you say you're going to do. And you have to communicate that to your constituents, and I really believe in that.
Ms. Amawala.
We see candidates and elected officials on both sides of the aisle talk about stopping these endless wars that our taxpayer dollars are being used to fund bombs, weapons, missiles, killing innocent families and children across our country. I've written a piece of legislation called the Books Not Bombs Act. It takes 1% of our defense budget and transferred to education leads to a 10% increase in federal funding for public education, so your zip code doesn't determine the quality of life and access to education your families receive, and schools are the nucleus of a healthy community. This is a 10-pole issue that we see politicians forget about as soon as they get elected in the House.
Mr. Nguyen.
Look, we need, again, to make sure that we do not just pay lip service. And I think we're seeing a lot of that right now during this campaign season. And I think it's important for us, and I am the only Democrat and the only person in this race that's solutions-oriented to addressing the cost of living for you and your family. We have to bring down the cost of housing, the cost of property taxes, the cost of health care, groceries, and utilities, and we have a plan to do so. Again, we have to make sure that we go after these multi-billion-dollar hedge funds. It would take, again, a fifth of a penny on all transactions. We can generate $800 billion extra. And we can bring that back to our district and make sure we can reduce your cost of living. But that has to be a reality, and that's what I'm fighting right now to do, and that's what I'll be fighting for in Washington as well. But we need to make sure we deliver tangible results for the American people to make your life much more affordable, and that is my main focus right now, and that's my laser focus, is to address your cost of living right now.
Thank you. Nikki, we have another question.
And our final question, please state your name.
Gwendolyn Bowie.
What's your question?
Can you name an issue where you're willing to publicly disagree with Democratic leadership, even if it costs you committee assignments, endorsements, or future support?
Ms. Amawal, we're going to start with you.
This ties into the first public question that was asked by audience members, and I would be a co-sponsor of the Block the Bombs Act, which means no further military aid given to the state of Israel. We saw this was the reason why that the Democrats lost in 2024. At the DNC, the ask was simple: please let a Palestinian on the stage, and the Democrats said no. This is still something that we've consistently been on the wrong side of history in, and I have consistently been public about my stance and very crystal clear on this. I'm not one of those candidates that will say one thing in one room and another, so saying it on television now.
Thank you. Mr. Nguyen.
Look, we have to go after Big Pharma, right? I mean, I think we need to make sure we reduce your cost of healthcare. I think we need to get there via obviously making sure that we take on the pharmacy benefit managers. That's been something that's very crucial to my platform. We need to make sure that we end Big Pharma pay to delay scam. That's, again, very crucial to my platform. And we need to make sure we pass those savings on to our families, right? And so I think right now we're at, again, in the fight of our lives right now is we got to make sure that we stop the widening of the gaps between the billionaires and the working class and middle class families, right? We need to make sure everyone in this community, in the 9th Congressional District and beyond, have a chance, a fair shot at the American dream. And that's what I'm running right now to restore. It's to restore the American dream for all of us, so that no matter what zip code you're from or where you're born, that you get the same shot at economic opportunity, healthcare opportunity, housing opportunity, educational opportunity. And we need to make sure that we, again, provide those tangible benefits for our Americans.
Thank you. Mr. Simmons.
In my first year in the Illinois Senate, the majority Democrats, my caucus, wanted to put a bill on the board that would install a natural gas pipeline in a black farmland community south of Chicago in Pembroke, Illinois. I knew at the time I couldn't support that, and I told leadership that I would not be voting for it. I would in fact be voting no, and I would be speaking against the bill. People told me that was not a good look, that you're getting out of line as a freshman member and you don't want to go against your party. And I took a courageous vote, and I brought three other Democrats with me on that no vote because I felt like it was bad for equity. I felt like it did those black farmers a serious disservice when our state is going in the opposite direction of renewable energies in our state. It didn't cost me anything politically. I think there were some people that were surprised that I was as courageous and bold and outspoken as I was as a freshman state senator, because I also am not a bomb thrower. I'm not somebody that just does stuff on social media to get clicks. When I raise my voice and I push back, it means I really believe in what I'm doing. And in that instance, I'm so proud that I voted against that natural gas pipeline in Pembroke, Illinois, and did right by those black farmers.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you, audience, for your terrific questions.
Tonight, we're bringing together experts, advocates, caregivers, and older adults to talk honestly about what it means to age in Chicago today.
How do we stay mentally and physically strong as we age? And what can our community do to make aging something we embrace, not fear?
State of Aging, a community conversation, Wednesday, February 18th at 7 p.m., only on CAN-TV 19. Experience the power of community television.
Got something to say about Chicago? Now's your chance to be heard. Chicago Newsroom 2.0 is launching Opinion, a new segment where everyday Chicagoans take the mic. Whether it's a neighborhood issue that's been ignored, a citywide concern that needs attention, or a fresh idea that could change our city, we want to hear from you. Submit your commentary at cantv.org/opinion. If selected, we'll invite you on air to share your perspective with all of Chicago. Experience the power of community television.
Voters have some important decisions to make at the polls on March 17th, including casting a vote for the person who will likely be the next congressperson from the 9th Congressional District. As we draw to a close, each candidate will have 90 seconds to tell voters here in the studio and those watching from home why they are the right leader for Illinois' 9th Congressional District at this critical moment in our shared history. We'll begin with Ms. Amawal.
Illinois' 9th Congressional District is a safe blue district. And the type of leader you elect in a safe blue district, in a safe blue state like Illinois, really matters. We find that people don't vote for policy, positions, or platform. They vote for people. And it's the type of person I invite you to implore who represents this vital community. Someone who is a product of the best of what Illinois 9 has to offer. Someone who has the lived experience along with the track record of getting things done. I'm the only candidate in this race as an elected official with experience in the public, private, and nonprofit sector, which means I know how to manage budgets, problems, and people. We deserve someone who will take that political courage because we don't have to worry about a MAGA-funded Republican primarying us in 2 years. All that to say, my name is Bushra Amiwala. It would be an honor to earn your vote on March 17th. You can learn more at bushraforcongress.com.
Mr. Nguyen.
I'm State Representative Han Nguyen, and I can say that it is only in the United States of America can a skinny refugee kid with a funny name be elected state representative of Chicago and then now go on to be a candidate for the United States Congress. But we got to make sure that those opportunities for all of us. And that's what I'm running to do, to restore the American promise for your kids, my kids, and for all of our community members, right? And so right now we're at an inflection point in our country's history where folks have been left behind. And we need to build back better from what has happened in this current administration. We need to make sure that folks have access to economic opportunity, that we bring down your cost of housing, your cost of healthcare, your cost of utilities, your cost of groceries, that we protect your Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security because it's going to be insolvent by 2035, and that we make sure we fight for our fundamental human rights, voting rights, women's rights, democracy, freedom, immigrant rights, refugee rights, LGBTQ plus rights. But we need to usher in a new generation of leadership that's going to do that. And we need to shake things up in Washington. I'm the only candidate in this race that is grassroots, powered by people. We've raised over $1 million by 10,000 donors who believe in this campaign. We've run a campaign that's inclusive. Over 100 different languages are spoken in this district. We're running a campaign in over 15 different languages. And so I think that's very important that we are right now making sure that we get folks to the polls. And so if you are interested in our campaign, our People Power movement, please join us at HOAN49.com, HOAN for 9.com. And let's remember, with Han win, we all win. Thank you.
Mr. Simmons.
Everybody, I'm State Senator Mike Simmons, and I am running for Congress. I'm proud that in the 5 years that I've served in the State Senate, I've been able to pass 50 pieces of legislation, bringing back millions of dollars to the Senate district I represent, funding LGBTQ-led mental health organizations, Black and Brown-led organizations focused on mental health, and our women-owned small businesses. I am running for Congress because we need a change. We need a shakeup in Congress. We need people who are not afraid to shake it up. I don't look anything like your typical member of Congress, but I can outwork them and I can represent my communities better than people that are there now. I'm proud that if I win this primary on March 17th, I would effectively become the first Black person and the first LGBTQ person to ever represent any of Chicago in Congress, the land where I was born and raised, at a time where we're losing 5 members of Congress all at the same time. I am proud that as a first-time national candidate, we have built a scrappy grassroots operation where I have over 3 dozen endorsements from elected officials and community leaders all across the 9th District, including the Congressional Black Caucus, including the Victory Fund, and the Equality PAC. And I'm proud that as a first-time national candidate, I have raised nearly $500,000, not from corporations, not from special interests. My first donor was my 81-year-old grandmother, and people that live in the 9th District who are our small business owners, who are our teachers, and who are our neighborhood leaders. Those are the people funding my campaign, and those are the people that I will be representing in Congress. Please go to MikeSimmons.org, check out my platform, make a grassroots donation if you can, and help us to fight the unprecedented amount of millions of dollars that are coming into this race by outside groups that are trying to buy the seat. Thank you.
That concludes the 9th Congressional District Candidate Town Hall. Thank you to our candidates, and thank you to our audience, both here in the studio and at home, for joining us for this important conversation. The Democratic primary election is Tuesday, March 17th. Early voting is already underway. Your vote will help decide not just who represents the 9th District, but what kind of leadership Illinois sends to Washington. Again, thank you for joining us, and good night.
Thank you.